I'm Terry McMahon. I'm the president of Hodges University, and I just want to welcome you to this facility. I really don't have any role here whatsoever, other than the fact that Andy Hill is my fishing partner, and he has got a huge passion for the topic that we're going to discuss tonight, along with other passions. But he will introduce the panelists, and so without any further ado, let me welcome to the podium Andrew Hill.
Thank you, Terry. And tonight's presentation is a partnership effort between the Everglades Foundation, the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, and Hodges University. I'd like to recognize a few people, and I think I should start out with Hodges University and say thanks to Terry McMahon for accepting my request to have an event here without any knowledge of who would show up and what would be entailed, and certainly then invited ourselves to free food and alcohol courtesy of Hodges University. Thank you very much, Terry. Next, I'd like to introduce some of the staff members from the Everglades Foundation that are with us today. Stan Boynton, who many of you knew, grew up in this area. Stan, say hello. Thanks for coming, Stan. Jerry Carnes, who recently has joined the Everglades Foundation. Jerry, where are you? In the back of there. Well, welcome to Naples. We have a number of members of the staff of the Conservancy that are with us today, led by the Chief Executive Officer, Andrew McElwain. Andrew, hello. Thank you for coming. The staff people that I learned a tremendous amount that would, in a way, have made tonight's event possible. Kathy Worley, Jennifer Hecker. And moving on, we do have one elected official who is looking for a promotion. John Sorey, Vice Mayor of Naples. Thank you for coming, John. And we have Clarence Kears, Big Cypress Water Basin. Clarence, thank you for coming today. And then we have a number of people that also helped make this event possible and bringing various groups to this event. John Bruce with Gulf Coast Business Review. John, thank you for coming today. Gary Queen with representing the Financial Analyst Society of Naples. Gary, thank you for your efforts in bringing a number of people out today. I must say that investments is my profession, and I finally found a way to bring together fishing and finance, and that's what we're going to talk about momentarily. A number of other people helped to make this event organized and run efficiently. Charlotte Lure. Charlotte, say hello. Dean Alton, thank you very much for keeping our names of who's coming together. Your help is greatly appreciated. And then I should also mention a few other people. My business partner, Jennifer Figarelli, who puts up with all my crazy endeavors that I get into. Jennifer, thank you for coming. Where are you, Jennifer? And certainly I need to recognize my wife's, Dr. Susan Leversky, for also who has to put up with all my endeavors and my fishing activities. Thank you, Susan. With that, today we are not talking about biology. We aren't talking about water flow. We're talking about a machine. And this machine produces a resource called water. Years ago, this machine did a superb job in producing all the water that our ecosystem needed. And that didn't work. And came around, and then the Spanish arrived, and then they left, and then development came, and there was a superintendent overseeing this machine that produced the water and started to tinker with the mechanics. And they had an idea. They thought that it'd be better off if there wasn't so much water in the area. They thought if we cleared the water out of the way, we could do more with it. Well, they were a little short-sighted. Now that mechanic is still around, but through the help of various organizations such as the Everglades Foundation and the Conservancy, we were helping to educate that mechanic that maybe we need to take a look at that engine that produces water, but now isn't producing nearly as much water as we need. And maybe we need to go back and do some capital improvements. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Spending a few dollars to improve that engine that produces water that we need so much for all aspects of our life, from our drinking to, well, some of us use it for fishing. Recreation certainly is a very important part of our talk today, as we'll hear momentarily. But we need to take a look because we won't have a vibrant economy if we no longer have the water resources that we need. So this is about economics today. And I'm going to introduce our panelists that help us analyze this question, and in reverse order of their presentation. I'm first going to introduce Jack Work, who's the Executive Director of the Tourism Development Council of Collier County. Most of us know who Jack is. Second, Matthew Rathenberg, who works with Florida Power and Light as their manager of environmental services area, and has a very interesting background. He has a degree in wildlife ecology and a degree in fisheries management that I'm particularly interested in. Although I do need to inform him that his degree from the Ohio State University may not be so well accepted. Our first and keynote speaker, Dr. Robert McCormick, was the lead researcher of this very detailed economic presentation that was underwritten by the Everglades Foundation. That the full report is a mere 200 or so pages. I'm sure everybody has read it before they came to tonight's presentation. If not, it's available on the Everglades Foundation website or the Conservancy of Southwest Florida website. Dr. McCormick is the Professor Emeritus at the John Walker School of Economics at Clemson University. This, again, is a away game for him. But without further ado, please give him a warm welcome. Dr. McCormick.
Well, first of all, it's a real treat to be here. Thank you for having me. All of us at one time or another were in utero fetus, I guess. Most turn into humans, a few turn into criminals, and occasionally DNA goes bad and something comes out called an economist, and I happen to be one of those rare birds. And so I'm going to indulge you in some of the nuances of economics, but in a fruitful and hopeful way, I think, that to show you some things you might not have thought about as you look out the window. And I want to start telling you this story by telling you a little bit about my childhood. I was born in Florida, one of the rare birds that was born in Florida, and an economist too, so I'm AB negative blood, so you're looking at an unusual character up here, but I was raised, to the extent I was raised, barring the line from Jimmy Buffett, I guess I grew older but not up, but part of when I was growing older was in South Georgia. And I didn't actually see this happen, but my grandmother took me to her brother's house, and she showed me in the second floor of this old country home out in the middle of Effingham County in South Georgia. She showed me what she said was an artesian well pipe. How many of you ever seen an operating artesian well? I knew you would all be old. All right. But for those of you who have not seen one, an artesian well is a well that produces water flowing without any external energy being applied to it. And it comes about, at least in South Georgia, it comes about, and almost everywhere else, from the fact that there's an aquifer lying underneath the ground, and the weight of the water, which is coming from upstream somewhere in an underground river, the weight of that water pushes the water up. And then my grandmother told me this story about my great uncle, and how they had built in their bathroom upstairs and had running water throughout the house on the basis of this artesian well. So what I want you to think about is that as an ecosystem service. There's an ecosystem there, a complicated ecosystem that have to be a hydrogeologist to even begin to think about how that water gets from the rain into the mountains and down in the ground and comes and pushes back up. But then at some point, in our case, it was the city of Savannah, and it was Union Bag, and then many other paper mills, and all the people that moved into the city of Savannah started taking water out of that aquifer and reduce that pressure. And so when I was actually in the house, they had put in a pump. So I want to talk about the economics of artesian wells. At one point in time, the ecosystem pushed the water upstairs, flushed the toilets, washed their hands, and took a shower. But at some point in time, because of changes that took place through the results of economic growth and prosperity and all things that we cherish and look for, what happened was a pump had to be built and then bought, and not only that, but electricity had to be applied to it to get that same service. So if you wanted to figure out in your own little notebook, again, you're living in a world of economics now, which is not real. It's a different world. It's from a different planet. What is that thing worth? How would you do it? Well, it's not hard. You can stop and think about it this way. How much does the pump cost, and how much does it cost to run it? Are the real cost of reproducing the ecosystem services? So if you can quantify how much electricity that pump uses, and how much it costs to produce that pump, and how much maintenance it takes, and how often you have to make sure that, like we did down there, go and turn on a light in the well house when it gets cold in January so the pump doesn't freeze. Those are the costs of reproducing the ecosystem services that naturally were present before economic growth and development. And as Andy said, economic growth and development came to South Florida over the last 100 more years, and the plumbing changed down here. And the result of that was a lot of services that the ecosystem produced naturally are no longer produced naturally, but you have to reproduce them with alternative means. Now, comes along in 1999 something called the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. And this plan is a business plan. It's a plan to take electric pumps out, take the electricity off, and restore the aquifer so that the water will go back upstairs in my great uncle's house. And that's not the only thing, of course, but that's the methodology of what we were hired back in January a year ago to a consulting enterprise I'm associated with in Atlanta, Mather Economics, to ascertain how much ecosystem services would be forthcoming in economic value if the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan was actually implemented. So, for those of you in the business world, you see a business plan, and the first thing as I do when I'm doing business consulting, I see a business plan, I ask almost instantly, where are the pro formas? And so the Everglades Foundation says, well, we see the business plan, that's sir, we're going to do this, we're going to do it this way, we're going to do it on this day, and blah, 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 here's what we're going to do. Somebody else says, well, tell me about the cash flows associated with it. So the job that we accepted for the Everglades Foundation was to produce the pro formas. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we did that, and then let you ask whatever questions you have, so that you can come to some reasonable peace of mind that these numbers have some virtue and are real. Okay. So this is just a summary of what I just said. And I wanted to give you a sense of how much work went into this 200-page thing. There's a number of PhDs up here, MBAs, Masters of Economics, even, God forbid, we had a lawyer. We fed into the redfish so that we can fly. But we began in late February, and we had an interim report delivered in D.C. at the Everglades Summit, and we finished up in August. So several thousand human hours of work, and surely not enough pay, but that's okay. It was a lot of fun, and I'm going to get a chance to be down here with you as a consequence. Again, I am writing a small type, and those who want to read real fast can. As Andy says, the Everglades ecosystem is a giant firm. It produces lots of outputs. If this were General Electric, you'd have to pay for them. You don't have to pay for them, but they have value by virtue of the fact that you're willing to pay for them. And what our task when we approach this problem is to say, how much are you willing to pay? And if you lose them, how much would you not have, which you otherwise would have had, that you didn't know you were having because you weren't paying for it? And it turns out to be a giant sum of money. It's not fees and it's not, So what we have attempted to estimate is what you have paid for the things that you're getting. And the implication of it is these things are worth far more because we're not measuring the part you don't pay. We could do that, but it would take a lot more time, a lot more money, and be more highly controversial. One of our goals was not to be controversial, was to be conservative, was to play safe, so that people wouldn't take hot shots at one sentence and by virtue of that, destroy the whole project. So, in essence, if you think about this artesian well in my great uncle's house, his name is Jim, by the way. How much pumps would you have to buy over the next 50 years, and how much would you have to put into a savings account so that you have enough money to pay the maintenance and to pay the electricity? Call that the present value of the artesian well. It's the money you don't spend on electricity and pumps. And it's the accumulated present value of that money over 50 years. We did it over 30 years, 40 years, and 50 years. And we discounted those future amounts. Money you have to spend 30 years from now is not the same as money you have to spend today. And we broke these categories of outputs of this General Electric kind of Everglades system into groundwater purification, aquifer recharge, water quality and residential real estate, recreation and tourism, open space, commercial and recreational fishing, something you all care about a great deal here, wildlife habitat and hunting. And there are other things that we didn't count because, again, to avoid controversy, other water quality, and I was having a conversation just a minute ago about red tides that came in '04 when a lot of water came out of Lake Okeechobee down to Coosawhatchee and some of it floated down here. Nobody knows for certain that that's exactly what happened, but it's widely suspected to be true. And because we didn't have the scientific certainty, we chose not to add value associated with reduced red tides. If that water, instead of coming out the Coosawhatchee and St. Lucie, would actually return sheet flow and go down to the river grass and end up in Florida Bay. Other things like fire suppression. San Clemente, the fire just here already, it's smoking up I-75. Difficulty in measuring exactly what those are. So we took things that were easily measured and left out these things and created a conservative approach to this problem of performance. What I want to assert to you is I'm confident that the numbers are underestimates of value, and they're big even with. We used actual market transactions of people actually buying things. And I'll show you one of those in careful detail in just a minute. We didn't ask people anything. In my opinion, a really good economist is somebody who watches people and doesn't talk to them. Don't have any social skills in We're very cautious to avoid over-counting and double-counting, and I'll try to explain those if you have questions. And we were very conservative, as already mentioned. I stand by our work, and we used the actual state of the Everglades in 1970s and 1980s as benchmarks for restoration. I'll go through. Let me just show you one. Here is the last, on the right, oops, sorry, press the wrong button. Here is the last, in this case, 40 years of underground salinity in a large number of test wells in the Everglades in 16 counties reaching the South Florida Water Management District. Notice what's been happening to salinity. It's rising, and why is that true? Anybody know? Surely somebody. Yes, exactly. And the seawater is coming in underneath. There's a plume of fresh water like this, which has weight. Water weighs 8 pounds a gallon, 50 pounds per cubic foot. It's heavy. Carries them around if you don't believe it. And what happens is the ocean water seeps in under that plume like this, and if you lift that weight, you get more saltwater intrusion. Well, that salt water is not very good for taste, and it's not very good for plants, and it's not very good for making lots of things around your home. And the consequence of that is you have to take that salt out in the most proper method and most economically efficient method today is reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis simply uses electricity to push water through a filter, and the more salt it is, the harder you have to push and the more you have to clean that filter. So what we did was we projected, we built a model of groundwater salinity and groundwater use in South Florida out 50 years. And you get a point up here somewhere. And then we said, okay, if In fact, we do SERP and engage the currently estimated $11.5 billion sequence of projects. And if, as the hydrologists assert, and I have come to believe, that will restore the salinity to these levels, then you got, instead of having salinity up here, we'll have salinity down here. All of that salinity doesn't have to be taken out of the water, and therefore you are going to have to pay in the future if you don't restore the Everglades. Whenever you restore the Everglades, you will save electricity. That means saving money. That means saving reverse osmosis plants that have to be built. We didn't even include the plants. We simply included the electricity savings of not having to do what this model predicts compared to the actual levels, and we actually use 1970 levels, these levels right here, the average of these levels. And we estimated on that basis that, you can look at this, let me point to this number, about $13.1 billion. Okay. So, how do you interpret this number right here? This number is how much electricity you and the other 15 counties of South Florida, well, excluding Dunn and we're actually from Lee County, some of you are probably from Lee County too, besides them too. But the other 14 counties are going to have to spend on electricity to take the salt out of the water that is increasingly going to encroach in your groundwater, the surfacial aquifer. I'm going to talk about the deep aquifer for a minute. 500 feet down under you is really salty water, it's ocean water. That's not where your water comes from. It comes from the first 200 feet more or less. And that water is increasingly salty because it is not getting the sheet flow that you could get if the water didn't go out the Lucy Hatch or the St. Louis. Okay? So no, this is not rocket science, is it? Now you wish you'd been an economist too. You have to lose your mind and your soul. You can see the Colleton County estimates here, and I'll show them to you later on. All the rest of this is the kind of stuff that you do in a pro forma. You do sensitivity analysis. You adjust factors one way or the other, and you do 30, 40, 50 years. And all this is in that 200 pages that nobody should read. But it's available for you to read if you like. Impact on real estate. The economic literature has estimated a strong and positive correlation between lots of different environmental factors and the value of land. Let me just give you three. The quality of a school district impacts the value of the land. I know you don't like to think about things like that, but trust me, the science of this is relatively crystal clear and not overly controversial. And if you take two homes and put one in a good school district and put one in a relatively poor school district, everything else the same, the one in the good school district will sell for a higher price. The same thing is true if the air is clean. And the same thing is true if the water or close by is clean. Not only is it true, but we can quantify the impact of improving schools, air, and water quality. So the economic literature has a method called hedonic pricing. You don't get called any of the words that don't mean anything. What they mean is the common sense of a car with an air conditioner is worth more than one without. And a car with four good tires is better than a car with 3 good tires. And a house on clean water is worth more than a house on dirty water. And you can quantify those things if you have a lot of data and a lot of time and a bunch of geeks sitting in front of computer screens. And that's what we did. I showed you the list of geeks. And geeks is in front of you. All right? So again, imagine that we simply restore the water quality to the 1970 levels. We're not talking about something draconian or fantastic. We're talking about putting the water back to the 1970 levels, which the hydrologists and scientific water managers say will happen if SERP takes place. I will not tell you that I know that because I couldn't possibly know that. I'm taking it on scientific conversations with a lot of knowledgeable people that I can come to trust that SERP, if done correctly, will restore water quality to its 1970 level. And let me just show you a picture of dissolved oxygen is an important component of water quality. It's by no means the only one. But look what's happened to water, dissolved oxygen oxygen content in your water over the last 40 years. And all we're going to do is take this and raise it up here for free. Well, not for free, for $11.5 billion. But this is anything but free. I said billion. Okay, it's a lot of time. But in return, what you're going to get is cleaner water. But what will cleaner water do to those housing values? It's going to make them better because people like their houses on clean water, not dirty water. If you don't believe me, rewind to 2004 and try to sell a piece of land on one of the red tide beaches. Okay? And here's the deal. There is a lot of residential real estate in Florida. Guess how much? Close to $1 trillion in the 16 counties of owner-occupied residential real estate. I'm not talking about rental homes. I'm not talking about commercial real estate. I'm not talking about industrial real estate. I'm talking about $1 trillion, $980 billion of residential owner-occupied real estate in 16 counties of South Florida. A very small increment in that will produce a giant benefit, and we're talking about a small increase in water quality right here, which will lead to a $16 billion increase in residential real estate values. Conservatively estimated, not talking about anything but owner-occupied residential. Okay. The rest of these categories, I will talk a little bit about fishing in just a second because it's a big deal for Andy, and he offered even to take me fishing, so I've got to talk about that just for him. But that's how we did our work. And I want you to feel comfortable about it. If you don't, I'd rather talk about how we did our work than the impact of it, because if you come to believe that it was done carefully and correctly and commonsensely and not some sort of high-powered voodoo, you will be a better informed person to have an intelligent conversation with whoever you care about the impacts of SERP and the funding of these projects and whether they make good sense or not. So the bottom line is we have a conservative estimate of the present value of $46.5 billion with a estimated cost of which is not my number. This number comes from the Corps of Engineers and the SERP business plan. That's not a number that we did. We only did this 46.5. But that's 4 to 1. And it's a conservative number, and the low end number is about half that, and the high end number is 4 times that. So if any of you ever look at business plans and pro formas, and you were in an angel investing enterprise that might offer this to you, and you trusted the numbers, you would be right. That's the bottom line.
You used the acronym SERP a couple times. Can you remind people?
Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. I apologize for acronyms. I hate them myself, and I shouldn't have used them. The Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, CERP, is the holistic plan that was put together, culminated in 1999, under the auspices of the Corps and lots of other agencies, which is a 200-some-odd page, a long document that lists many component projects of restoring the Everglades. Okay, and as modified subsequently with some better science, including the sugar purchase to restore seafood. Any other questions? I'm really quickly move on because I'm taking way more time than I should have. But I'm a college professor and I know that the bell will not ring. So let me show you, for instance, on recreational and park visitation expenditures, $178 million of NPV incremental increase in your county alone. Okay, a total overall of $1.3 billion. But that's just an estimate of increasing the capacity of people to enjoy the outdoors. Fishing is a big deal here. Our approach was to look at largemouth bass because there were really good data on largemouth bass. So it's, so like, why are you looking for the turkeys underneath the street light? Well, that's where the light is. We had data on largemouth bass. We don't have data on tarpon. But I promise you that a tarpon is worth more than $4.32. Would you all agree? Yeah. Okay. So when you look at the fishing numbers, realize that we're aggregating the fishing numbers, assuming that a caught fish is never been tarpon fishing knows that that's a grossly conservative estimate. And so we look at the number of largemouth bass that get caught, we restore them to their 1986 level, again, using the actual fish caught in 1986. If the SERP will restore fishing to the 1986 level, then we get it in, oh, I'm sorry, this is groundwater. I'll show you the fishing numbers in just a minute. This is your groundwater estimates under two different scenarios. This is the more conservative one, assuming that only all groundwater withdrawal must be salinated, and that only the saline groundwater must be salinated. So again, that's the savings of electricity. Here is your residential real estate. There's the $16 billion. That's $973 million. That's approximately $1 billion. Okay, of residential improvement in real estate. The sensitivity analysis is over there. Our full study is online, as Andy mentioned, and you want to take questions now? You want to move on? Let Marcus take the stage. Thank you for your time, and I'll be available. There's one.
I had one question on the chart before you get off on another one. Hold up. On that chart that measures the dissolved oxygen, I would think that would be kind of a gradual process, but there seems to be a couple of large spikes, especially if you're talking about bringing back to 1970 levels. There was a big spike there, and then a couple ones later. What does that mean exactly?
This has to do with rainfall and water flow, primarily. So what you're partly measuring here is the annual variation in rainfall. Okay, but you see the red line is the trend. But what you're right that these were dry years. That's partly why that dissolved oxygen is low. These were wet years. This was a wet year, and you just see it. So you see a sort of cycling there from rainfall.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mark?
If I have to follow, but I'll do my best. I've been asked to be on this panel to represent industry and the utility sector. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about, from a FPL's perspective, arguing water and the importance of Everglades restoration, and what things can be done to prolong or protect our water resources, both the quantity and the quality. There's a couple themes that are threaded throughout my short presentation, in a couple minutes. But balance, I think there's a real balance. We live here, we need potable water, but we also want to maintain the environment and Everglades restoration. And also public-private partnership, that's another theme that I touch on in my presentation. It's the wrong direction. I wanted to take a step back and talk about water. When we look at the planet, there's a finite source of water on Earth, and a good portion of that is salt water. There's about 3% that remains as fresh water. And of that 3%, much of that is still maintained as caps and glaciers. So the water we're talking about, and obviously all this water isn't in South Florida, but is a small percentage fresh water that's available, surface water, groundwater. A small percentage is available for us to maintain the environment, to drink, to produce consumable goods, to run power plants, because water is an important necessary piece of power generation. So there's all these things pulling on water, and so Everglades restoration is part of the solution in prolonging and protecting water resources long term as well as water quality. But there is a balance. There is a balance, and conservation. We're all familiar with low flow toilets we have in our facility. Running your sprinklers only twice a week instead of every day. Conservation efforts are important. Looking for alternative sources of water as an industry per se, so we stop using the freshwater resources that could be used as potable water for restoration, and even environmental restoration. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the alternative approaches we're using, as well as some of the restoration efforts, because I think they complement what was just discussed in the previous presentation. So when we develop new projects, we look for the lowest quality water source. And we have a project here in operation in Florida at our West County plant in Palm Beach County where we use reclaimed water. This is water from Palm Beach County that would otherwise be discharged. It's now used for a secondary beneficial reuse. We're also proposing a similar project at 2 new units that we're proposing at our Turkey Point plant in Miami-Dade County. Again, this is water that would either go to the ocean or be injected into deep wells without a secondary beneficial reuse. So I'm speaking from our experience, but I think many industries need to look at opportunities for using lower quality water sources to reduce the amount of fresh, high quality water that's used in processes. We talked a little bit about the deep wells, the saltwater wells, or saltwater aquifers. We have facilities that use that water instead of potable water in an effort to reduce impacts of potable water. But there's also technologies that can be used to reduce water. This is a picture of our Martin plant in Martin County. And you have your traditional power plants here, but we also have cooling towers, which is part of the cooling process, and it reduces the amount of water that you need for power generation, as well as cooling ponds, another method of reducing the amount of water you need for power generation. And then solar power. Solar power is part of the electrical generation solution in Florida. It gives us a diverse way of generating power. It doesn't meet baseload demand, but it is part of the solution. And we've developed a 75 megawatt power park at this Martin plant. So we're using technology that doesn't require water for cooling like a traditional power plant. So this is where there's really a balance. We need to live here and we need water for our processes, but we need to do it as responsibly as possible. We also own and operate the Everglades Mitigation Bank. I would argue it's the largest privately owned Everglades restoration project. I haven't found another one. So when I do, I will change my slide. But it's 13,000 acres that we have under conservation easement. For those of you who are familiar with Miami-Dade County, this is about 25 miles south of Miami in the Model Land Basin. This is actually Carterstown Road. If you visit Alabama Jackson, somewhere down here. Frequent Alabama Jackson. This is real Everglades restoration that's going on here. It creates a pathway between Everglades National Park and Biscayne National Park. It's home to 60 species of protected plants and animals. And we're creating sheet flow, restoring habitat. And I want to talk about that a little bit on the following slides. The types of things that Bobby talked about, stacking up water, recharging aquifer. That's what we're doing in this Everglades mitigation bank. Here's an example of a lip berm that we created that's 5 miles long and about 14 inches high. And what that does is water sheet flows across the landscape here. It slows its flow. It doesn't go directly to the regional canal system that will take that water out. It holds it in the area and holds that fresh water, recharging the aquifer below and enhancing the levels above. We've also installed 40 what we call irrigated structures. And what they do is when the water elevation is high in the canal system, in the regional canal system, the water flows through these weirs onto wetlands. It doesn't flow back out. Again, allowing water that would otherwise not be available to the wetlands, flow into the wetlands and stack up. So these restoration efforts are improving the hydraulic cycle in the Model Land Basin, and these are the types of projects associated with Everglades restoration that Bobby described at this economic benefit. I'll just close with some great pictures from our different facilities. We manage the Barber Swamp in Martin County. It's an old-growth cypress swamp, 400 acres. Pretty amazing place. It's open to the public. I recommend you try to get a tour out there. These manatees that are hanging out near one of our plants during the cooler times of the year. And then crocodiles. We have a large crocodile management program in South Florida. We're pretty proud of as well. Some other animals. So I'll take my questions, I guess. Will do.
Thanks, Bobby, for kind of setting up the process here of what we're really talking about. You're probably wondering, why the heck is the tourism guy here talking about restoration? Is that what tourism does? tell you, in our case, it is an extremely important part of what we do, because we truly do believe that if we don't sustain the assets that we have here in Southwest Florida specifically, and in my case in Collier County, those wonderful resources are certainly not going to be here for future residents or visitors. And we as residents here in Southwest Florida really enjoy a lot of the same things that our visitors do. And if it's good for the visitors, it's probably good for the residents as well. We need to maintain things. The Everglades, from our point of view, is really our link to our history, our past. We're able to really show visitors what Florida was hundreds of years ago, because it hasn't changed much here, other than certainly the water landscape has changed here. Overall, things have not changed that much, and it's really our promise to the future, because as I said, we want to maintain and sustain what we have now, so that this kind of a wonderful scene is here hundreds of years from now. So why is restoration important? Well, it certainly, from our point of view here in Collier County, fulfills our promise, because our grand promise is that this is Florida's last paradise. And the Everglades certainly are a really important part of the Paradise Coast, as we call this region of Southwest Florida. It also, in my mind, really helps maintain the commitment that Marjorie Stoneman Douglas had. One of her quotes was that there are no other Everglades. And I'm really paraphrasing here, but ladies and gentlemen, if we lose them, if we don't restore them, there'll never be anything like it again, ever. And so we'll never really be able to replace that resource. So that's why it's important to us. The other thing that's really important, and I'm really a guy that believes a lot in partnerships and working together, and this project is really a great demonstration of the private sector working with the government sector and all the various environmental groups that really understand the importance of this restoration project, working together on a common goal, and I think it's just great that we're able to do this. One of the other things that's really important, and you saw it in some of Bobby's figures, is this really is going to create jobs. Tourism sustains jobs and certainly builds it. Interesting statistic is that for every 44 visitors we're able to bring here, we create one new tourism job. Same thing happens if times are tough. And in the last couple of years, we've seen it. When we have less visitors, we have layoffs, because we simply cannot sustain that same level of employment. The other thing that's really important to us, from my organization's point of view, and I think for all of us, the world truly is watching what we're doing here. If we can fulfill the commitment to restore the Everglades to what they were water quality-wise back in the 70s, what a fantastic demonstration that is, again, of working together. We simply can't fail. We have got to find a way to work together to make this happen. What does ecotourism mean to us, specifically in the tourism business? It really does help connect our visitors, those folks that think we're golf and beach destination, to so much more. It helps us, and I mean this sincerely. We have a commitment to improving that water quality. If we are able to improve the populations of our various wildlife, what wonderful new opportunities we've got to offer our visitors when they come here. I will tell you, as I travel around the world, people don't think of Florida when they think about ecotourism or nature activities. They think about all the wonderful exotic places around the world, but Florida isn't normally on the list. I think that if we're able to restore the Everglades and really bring some true meaning to the word the Everglades, that term is known worldwide. I mean, people don't quite know where the Everglades are, and I'll get to that in just a minute, but they sure know about the Everglades. As I said, it makes us more than beaches and golf, and what's an interesting statistic is that about 40% of our visitors, yeah, they come from the beach and the golf, and restaurants, and all the other things. 40% of them are doing some kind of a nature activity while they're here. And most of them didn't think about doing it until they got here. So obviously, I need to do a better job of expressing to people the opportunities they have to enjoy a nature experience before they get here. But it really is important from our visitor center points of view that we're sure that they know about these things when they do get here. The other great thing is that nature travelers spend more money than the traditional traveler. Oftentimes they will add days to their stay, which helps all of our businesses throughout the community. They stay longer, so that's really good to see as well. We've talked a lot about big numbers and lots of billions Bobby talked about. The truth is that tourism is one of those multi-billion-dollar industries here in Southwest Florida. It's an extremely important part. It's our largest employer. And most businesses that you can think about in our community are affected by the rise and fall of visitors coming here. We just need to continue to improve the product that we have to offer. Interesting, and we have a lot of journalists and media here. Internationally, the Everglades are a huge interest. We have teams of writers and photographers calling us all the time, wanting to come here, seeing what is going on. I was in the Netherlands in January, and I had a writer come up to me and say, I want to come there and do a story specifically about the restoration project. He spent almost 2 weeks here, just going around learning from all the different groups, what's going on, what's the process, are we going to get it done? I mean, that was his big question. I have not seen the article yet, but I know he was here for a long time, and I think it has done some really, it'll be a very positive article because of what he was able to see here, the know-how that we've got to get this project done. What's also interesting is that internationally, and people outside of our area actually know more about this project and the importance of this restoration project than we do right here in our own backyard. Many of our elected officials honestly don't understand. And we absolutely see that every year at the state level, and we see it at the federal level as well. They just don't really get why this is important, why they need to put money toward this extremely important project. This is always interesting to me, how big the Everglades are. It's a big enough deal here in Collier County. 60% of our county is set aside in preserves and so forth, never to be developed. Very, very important that that Everglades restoration project be told to the world that that's part of what we have here in Collier County. The kinds of activities that people do here and the things that we've got to make sure we preserve. You can see sightseeing is really big, photography is huge, bird watching. My goodness, it's amazing how many bird watchers internationally we have that come here because of the great sights that we have in the area. People really like to get out and do swamp walks, muckabouts, as we're often called. And camping is big, getting back, seeing the history of the area, canoeing, kayaking, walking tours, boat tours, all different activities, but all enjoying the wonderful nature activities that we have here. What we're doing as an organization, as the Convention and Visitors Bureau, first of all, the Everglades are important to us because, as you can see, it's part of our name. It's part of our brand. Naples, Marco Island, Everglades. Worldwide, we are telling that story that we are a complete destination. We've got nature, we've got beaches, we've got golf, we've got everything that a visitor might like to see in a destination. Very important niche market for us. It's the fastest growing niche market worldwide in nature tourism. We just a couple of years ago established a new Blue Way paddling trail that goes all the way through the 10,000 islands and will eventually hook up and link in with the Great Colusa Blue Way in Lee County. We're trying to build a network of paddling trails throughout this south part of southwest Florida so that people can truly enjoy that particular activity. We have just launched a new green microsite, which is all about nature tourism, all about all the various green initiatives that are going on. We have, I think, 17 hotels now in the area that are part of the Green Lodging Certification Program here in Florida. We really believe that, and that's all part of this whole project of why we are so interested in making sure that the Everglades are restored. We also were pioneers in an organization that works with eco-tour operators throughout South Florida, now all of Florida. It's called the Society for Ethical Ecotourism. We're helping providers do a better job of telling the right story. And that's the business that we're in. We're in the storytelling business of the history of the area, how to enjoy it, how to preserve it for the future. So that's been a real shining light in that area. So to wrap it up, it's truly restoration is our link to the past and our promise to the future as well. So future generations who will come to visit here and enjoy what we have. As I said before, the world truly is watching us. Ladies and gentlemen, we just can't fail here. We've got to make this happen. Thank you.
And you thought that I just wanted to restore the Everglades so catch a few more fish. Just to sum up some of the important comments, Jack did a splendid job of illustrating how our economic cycle works. We need that tourism dollar to come in. That's the front end of our whole economic cycle that gives us our opportunity to live here. And Matthew, what a great example. I could even figure out that simple example by putting up a little berm to slow down the water flow so that the water then goes back into the aquifer rather than running down a canal. I mean, I could figure that out. I'm just a business guy. And then certainly Bobby added up, it's, well, $48 billion, and I thought I accounted for most of the value of the Everglades and my fishing expenditures, so there's a few other people that participate. Just to give you an update on a few things that are going on, I'll just three simple projects that are moving forward in Everglades restoration. Over on Stan, on your side of the area, Highway 41 near Miami is being raised for roughly a mile section to allow water flow through Shark Valley to flow underneath the highway, which the highway was obviously the dam, allowing that water to make it down into the Florida Bay. That's just the first of hopefully many additions to that project. It's in essence a test. We need to raise probably somewhere between 7 to 12 miles to have the real effect of water flowing south. Further north, we have purchased a small portion of U.S. Sugar property to, again, at the bottom end of Lake Okeechobee, allow some water flow. And then over here in our area, most of you are probably aware of the restoration of the Picayune Strand, formerly known as the Southern Golden Gate Estates, which is where the old jokes about Florida swampland came from, as speculators purchased lands being sold by quasi-criminals. Given that we're just about at the end of our hour, and I have promised to finish up, and I see a number of people that are waiting to provide us with alcoholic beverages, I'm going to suggest that we have our question and answer with the panelists as they work their way through the room. And they'll be available for some period of time to allow personal questions. Marty?
Can I ask, one big question I wanted to ask you, as moderator, this is a meeting about economics.
Right.
There's a lot of other things going on. And we talked, specifically about the cost to benefit ratio of $1.5 billion. So it must be something specific, not a generality. Where does this $1.5 billion come from? What is going to be done with it, and who's going to do it?
Okay, well, that's a good way to close with that. It's actually about just in round numbers, and I leave the details of the restoration project left to the very good people at the Everglades Foundation, the Conservancy, that are involved in this on a daily basis. It's just my night job. I don't get paid real well to be involved. Basically, it's $11 billion. It'll be funded. In the past, it's been funded based on the political winds of what's going on. More recently, it's been Florida that's been funding it since Florida funded for a number of years during the Chris administration. Now it's gone to the federal level. Picking and Strand is being funded through some of the stimulus programs. And that's about a $200 million price tag, plus or minus. I may not be exact, so again, I direct your attention to those. What is important, and the message that I'll leave with you, is that if we do believe it is a sound business case that we need to restore the Everglades, and hopefully the panelists did a successful job in illustrating the business argument for moving forward, we will need to have support for this. And how that's going to happen, each of you need to pick up the phone or jot down a letter to your elected officials to make that ask and say, this is a good business case. We need to restore the Everglades. Our own economic opportunity depends on it. That's how it's going to happen, is that we do need to move forward. And it's not going to be easy. We all know the winds that are against us in terms of restoring the Everglades or any other expenditures. So there is a sound business case that I think makes sense. With that, I'd like to thank Hodges University again, Terry McMahon, Dave Rice, Joe Turner. Thank you for hosting us today. And the panels will be available for your personal questions. And I thank you all for your attention and your interest in the subject.